Welcome to the Nashville Post Podcast. My name is Nicolle Praino. I'm editor-in-chief of the Post, and on this show, we go inside the minds of company leaders who are reshaping our city's industries. This podcast is part of our Innovations and Ideas digital series brought to you by Cumberland Pharmaceuticals. For more stories and content like this, go to nashvillepost.com. Let's meet one of our disruptors.
Hi, I'm Mike Sewell. I am the Chief Digital Transformation Officer at Gresham Smith.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for being here.
Of course. I'm looking forward to digging in.
I want to first ask you, how are you innovating today?
Oh, in so many different areas. I think, and we're going to talk about a lot of these, but we're innovating with how we approach design. We're innovating how we engage with our people, how we engage with clients, what we're doing with data. It's pretty much, part of my title is digital transformation, looking at every aspect of things that we touch and how we can make them even cooler with the enablement of the right technology.
Tell me a little bit about your role and kind of what your thought process is behind how you carry it out every day.
Yeah, well, my role, digital transformation, generically means changing the way we work. And as I mentioned, it's a lot of engagement with lots of different folks. But my previous role, Director of Innovation, was really just thinking and challenging the concept of the historic view of what we do as designers of places and things that influence communities. And so it's a big kind of organic view of let's change how we design. Let's make it more impactful. And as you know, there's so much new fun technology now that opens new doors that weren't even possible 2-3 years ago. So
talk a little bit about your experience. You mentioned your previous role as Officer of Innovation. And so how has that shaped how you move forward today?
Yeah. So Director of Innovation, I'm a technologist, but I'm also an engineer. So I came into the engineering profession wanting to positively influence, infrastructure, the places that people visit. The Director of Innovation role was different because I became full-on technologist. I wanted to enable as much, as impactful technology as quickly as possible to challenge that. And that's kind of the other end of the spectrum. In my new role as the Chief Digital Transformation Officer, it's really a blending of those two. I don't want to turn on technology that's going to be detrimental to our professionals. And we also want to be impactful in driving change. So it's this really unique kind of blend of my previous role as a practitioner and engineer and the Director of Innovation role previously.
What do you see as the future of the work you're doing right now?
Ooh, that's a tough question. There's a lot of people trying to answer this, but I will say from our perspective, it is really about honing how our professionals work. We want the design process to be very human. And our CEO, Rodney Chester, has built this engine of culture. And the big challenge to me is how do we continue to press using technology, but keeping the heart of everything has got to be our people. And we've got a really unique thing, I think, cooking by focusing on the people and enabling the right technology that allows them to be even more of their most genuine selves.
I really want to dig in on that point about the people. Moving forward with this human-centric concept is so important in the age of technology that we're in with artificial intelligence. So tell me a little bit about how you're doing that.
So, well, and you've probably heard a lot of folks went all in on automation. A lot of folks went all in on using AI to do as much as possible. And I probably started there. Mentally, it's really easy for me to say, oh, yeah, we could be doing a lot of these various types of design and automate them. But what I think was really impactful to me was, again, our CEO said, hey, Mike, I know that the tech is fun. The tech is really interesting, but we don't want to short circuit the ability of young professionals in particular. Two things. Young professionals' ability to grow in similar ways to when I was coming up. Young engineers make mistakes. Young architects will explore things that retrain how they approach design, how they engage with clients. If we short circuit that, their ability to have a long and impactful, meaningful career is short circuited. So that was a really nice lens for him to challenge me with. But then at the other side, we have practitioners that have been doing great design for decades, right? And they're in a whole new world as well. But we have the ability now to bridge through the use of really targeted technology. How do we capture the decades of experience that they've got, and how do we now bring our younger engineers along, younger engineers and architects along by tapping into, those lessons learned and build something, I think, really incredible growth platform.
That speaks to kind of the culture that you're building too, in engaging, with both the highly experienced and maybe new to the industry kind of professionals, and how you bridge that gap. It's really about building the culture within your business, right? It's not just, doing the work. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would argue it's mostly the culture, because again, if we were to allow our entire worldview as designers of impactful, really community-driven design projects to be so technology focused, we're going to miss the projects are for people. Regardless of the projects, they're for people. And if we remove the people from the design process, they're going to feel less human. And so I think generically, I'd say it's all about the culture. You have to remind yourself, what did you come into this profession for? What do you really want to get out of this? And building, really impactful design projects, it starts with that mentality.
How do you put a structure around that creates opportunity for innovation? You can talk about building a culture that supports innovation, but how do you actually do it?
So that's a tough job too. Initially, when I was moved into the director of innovation role, we kind of had to blow up and rethink how do we enable folks to explore. Innovation is really about the enablement of exploration. And as you well know, we're in an innovation center. A lot of that is failure. So encouraging folks to maybe move outside of their comfort zone, encouraging them that, hey, this might not pan out the way you think. And we have great examples of that happening as well. Training them to say it's okay to explore. It's okay to misstep. Again, going back to how I developed as a young professional, that was the expectation. People knew you were going to misstep. And I think we've gotten to a point where people expect perfection because of the technology. Mm-hmm. And we have to encourage that kind of flexible environment first. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're innovating as a large corporate firm, what are the challenges in that? And, how do you work within that framework? And then what would be the benefit to somebody maybe who's a smaller firm listening to this, and, maybe they don't have some of the same structures in place where they can kind of just put the pedal to the metal and go. What can they learn from you guys, and what can you learn from them, vice versa?
Yeah, I would say we're a business. We're going to explore things that have this. There's an investment there. And so the metrics for innovative kind of platforms are really loose. That's been a challenge, if I'm being completely honest with you. Defining what the investment is, defining what we think it will return, or some middle ground, and documenting that so we can build really impactful and useful case studies around those innovative processes is I think the biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. But that's one side of it. The other side of it is inspiration. So many things that we're doing from an innovation standpoint are the encouragement of challenging the status quo, changing how you think about the design processes. And that in and of itself creates a fun environment. It creates a neat place to work, because you're constantly drawing inspiration from people doing unique things around you. And that's what we got. So I would say that for us, there's a dichotomy between the return, establishing the metrics around it, and then encouraging a really cool environment where people can explore what's next for design. Now, the second part of your question is small businesses. Honestly, I'm kind of enviable of smaller firms, because I believe we're fairly agile. Like if we want to explore something, they've got folks like me that are sitting on our management team, our C-suite, that can advocate for those things. And that's really great. That was a very intentional thing that the Gresham Smith leadership did. Smaller firms should be even more agile. And the technology is very approachable in terms of cost. And so they're probably at an advantage to really challenge and push folks our size, which, I would have said is impossible 5 years ago. So I think if they're establishing their own innovative kind of process, it's tougher for them to absorb that upfront cost. It's tougher for them to realize, if they have 10 people and one person is now committed to doing innovative work, that's a big hit. Mm-hmm. But the outcomes that you can drive as a resultant of that minor investment are just vastly, it's multiples.
The outcomes. That's a really great lead in to kind of talking about what you're doing now and what it produces. So talk about that a little bit.
This is going to be a tough one for a 30-minute podcast.
I know.
But outcomes, again, driving an environment where people can explore is inspiration. Drawing on data that we've got decades of design data that we're enabling different looks at. We're drawing from, keeping it very human. We've got some really great platforms that, and a couple patents about how do we use modern technology to really understand how people interact with environments. We're using real-time feedback, sentiment analysis, again, to reinforce that human look. We're oh my gosh, knowledge capture. There's so many different things, again, bridging our senior level professionals and we're building our own platform that can knowledge capture and walk people through design processes they may have never had exposure to, but then also building in a piece of that allows them to challenge, hey, there's a new thing that we could do that might make this better. And then they're tied to that overall kind of knowledge base as well. So it just, overall, I would say creating opportunities for every single employee to love what they do, for that to show in the design, and for us to learn how to unlock even cooler things in the future, if I had to really boil it down.
Talk about what it takes and, who are the employees that are building it? What are the skills that they need? If somebody wants to build their own platform in a similar fashion, what do they need to be doing? Yeah.
So skill sets that enable what I'm describing. You do have to have some exposure to programming. I think if you code, and I'm a coder as well, super nerdy, by the way, but if you code, you can break logical chunks of a workflow up into little modules. And if you're vibe coding, if you've never had exposure to that, you still have to do that kind of process because you isolate the calls and the requests to specific processes. So you being able to think logically about a workflow is very critical. Even if you don't have any coding experience, that is number one. Number two is we have a full data team. So innovation and information team. And it's kind of a merged view of our people that are really pressing the bounds of what's possible with the data we have available. And then we counterbalance that with what should we be enabling to maximize the culture that we're creating at Gresham Smith. And so if you're small, it doesn't take much with vibe coding tools and things like that. But to build the specific platform I'm talking about is machine learning. It's interface building. It's there's a lot of people skills. If we're talking about going to a senior level person that might have 3 or 4 decades of experience and them not having any exposure to tech, you have to be able to communicate. So it's little pieces of all of those things, I think, that makes what we're building in our team special.
Is there anything specific down into the details of that you can get into? I know that some of it's a little proprietary.
I'll tease.
Okay.
But I'll tease the generic parts of it. If you think through what you do every day, there's a set of expertise you have around your domain of knowledge, and you approach someone like me and you navigate a set of things that you have expertise around every day. Well, we have that. Over 1,200 employees, and every one of their domains of knowledge is a navigable path. Capturing that, making sure that we're doing good by those paths. And I know I'm speaking in code, kind of, but if we maximize our ability to understand how people navigate a domain of knowledge, if we understand the connective tissue between the decisions you make and the decisions and response I have, we've got a map of something really, really powerful. And again, I know I can't give away too much, but that's our worldview of our professionals' expertise, their ability to navigate really complex design issues, and ultimately drive positive outcomes for the people that ask us to design impactful things.
That speaks back to what we were talking about leveraging your experienced employees with your younger employees. And there is a talent gap there. And, I think every city is probably dealing with that. But talk specifically about in Nashville, how you deal with that.
Nashville's a great example of, and why I love now working back in Nashville. It's a melting pot. There's so many people navigate or flocking back to Nashville. And me as an innovator, you gain so much by being in a geographic location like this, because the diverse backgrounds, the diverse exposure to different, different problems that they've had to solve in their own individual communities or for their own individual design clients. It creates a fun environment, again, to be challenged, to move outside of your comfort zone, to think in unique ways if you're willing to share those ideas. So I don't know if I'm driving to the point that you're asking, but Nashville is unique because a lot of people are here. The talent gap, though, specifically, it's good for us to be in a place like Nashville for that reason as well. We have access to more people doing cool things, but the gap is real. If you look at the kind of like the timeline of development from, in a design sense, from a new employee that's super excited to get to work in a cool place like Gresham Smith, and you look at a person that has decided to spend their entire career. I'm one of those people. I was recruited out of college by Gresham Smith, and I plan to retire from here. There's a mentality that allowed me to endure little hiccups. It's not all, I know I'm talking about the fun things, but there's ups and downs in every career. And I think us being able to bridge those by some of the things we're talking about, creating opportunities to grow, creating platforms that encourage growth and knowledge share, creating better opportunities for those folks that experience a dip to overcome them because they're being challenged in new ways. All of those things are integral as far as I'm concerned. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. There's a big push for talent and training and development from, city leaders in terms of technology specifically, which I think has been a focus from, chunks past of different years and is kind of reemerging now. What have you seen that be like over the years? Has there been kind of an increase and then a dip, or has it been kind of steadily on the incline?
Steadily on the, for just awareness of the technology and how it applies to your career is a steady increase. And I think that's going to get exponentially, better. But you kind of have to. And as we move into what the firm looks like in the next 5 years, we're going to be targeting more folks that they don't have to have expertise, but they have to have an awareness for what the technology does, how they can use it as a tool, not to offload functions of their job, but how they use it as a tool and how it kind of drives what the future of their career is. Because that's another part of my role as digital transformation is I want everyone to have a meaningful career. I joke about this a lot, but another senior person in our firm, Jeff Cunin, has described kind of what you do as hurricane pathing. The farther out you go, the more unknown things become. And my job as Chief Digital Transformation Officer is to set a vector inside of that hurricane path. And the expectation is you're moving in what you believe is a good direction that's going to positively influence folks that choose to work with us. And you course correct continually. And so I like that as an example, but that's the big challenge. That's the job.
What can executives who maybe aren't like in the innovation or transformation space take from that in terms of their teams? If they don't have that person on their team, should they be operating in that same way or similar ways?
I think so, but I'm biased because I think we have a great thing going on. But yeah, you have to carve out time and be intentional with, you got to play with these tools. You have to understand how they fit into how you operate as a business and how they drive very specific client outcomes. You have to have an awareness. You have to have some basic level of understanding. Otherwise, your vector's way off. Your hurricane path is not even close to realistic. Because whether you want to believe it or not, and depending on your stance on things like AI, things like just technology in general, it is going to change how you do business. So yeah, you have to invest time in research.
And you have to be a little risk adverse, probably, right?
Yeah, I think your risk tolerance does change with things like this. Absolutely. Risk averse, I don't know that I would say.
Maybe that's too far.
Maybe it's too far. But you have to have an awareness of risk. You have to make logical decisions about what you choose to invest in. And ultimately, it's all about your people. It's all about, when I say people, not just internal, but your client people too. Our clients are navigating this weird unknown space at the same time we are. So if you're not prepared to help navigate and have a basis for your vector inside of that you can clearly communicate to your clients and to your folks, it's a miss.
The Nashville Post Podcast series is proudly sponsored by Cumberland Pharmaceuticals, Nashville's specialty biopharmaceutical company. With a focus on innovation, Cumberland is working to develop new medicines for the future. The company also sponsors and operates Nashville's Life Sciences Center, which houses Cumberland's laboratories and supports the community as a home for emerging medical ventures. Cumberland is committed to improving patient care and to strengthening the life sciences sector of Tennessee's healthcare ecosystem. Learn more at cumberlandpharma.com. We've talked a little bit about the innovation that you're doing kind of on that internal scale. Is there something that you guys are doing more externally with clients that you want to share about?
Yeah, several. And actually last year we hosted an event called Illuminate, where we did targeted client engagement, and we asked them to come in and play with all of our coolest tools that we were developing. And that's really fun. But the reason we do it is because if we pair up our clients that want to understand how the technology can benefit processes that we can influence and design, then we've got a neat partner that can help us beta test, or that can help us further, sculpt what an iteration of this tool might be that's more impactful. So yeah, we have lots of engagement with clients, but we have to find the right ones that are willing to come to the table. Sure, yeah.
That's a cool way to do it. Bring them in and
I think so too.
Have them play around with the tools.
Well, you don't want to spring it on them. Like, oh, by the way, now this thing is here and we expect you to use it. But if this is another thing, internal versus external, and we fell into this trap too. But if I developed a really cool thing, but I'm only one person. I'm the only one that believes in it. The adoption for it will be abysmal. If you build a team that is helping to craft it and helping to shape the thing, you automatically have believers in what you're building. So that's another reason why I do like client engagement. We want to enhance their experience. We want to make their lives easier. And we can do that with tools like what we're developing. Yeah.
I brought this up with somebody who's working on building an AI app that's targeted towards the construction industry, but more on a smaller scale. The construction industry is hands-on, trades, skills focused, maybe not always the earliest adopters of technology. So how do you work with them and make them see the value? That's
trickier, right? The new technology, AI things, it's not going to reach every sector. But let's take, for instance, the construction industry, like you mentioned. There's a handoff that happens between our world, our design world, with our deliverables that they take and run with. And that handoff can be made a lot cleaner if we have clear expectations and understand how that person is driving success versus what we can influence around the same map of reality. So yeah, I mean, that handoff, so much of our work is handoff. So much of our work is communication. AI is really good at some of that interpretive kind of, neat juncture. So yeah, even if they don't have a direct line that they can say AI is going to revolutionize the construction industry, which I do think it's going to help them, there's still points, connective tissue between what we do, how we hand it off, what we build into our models, what that's communicated like in terms of real data that they could be getting a ton of usefulness out of with some of the new technology.
I think that speaks to like the larger industries who are going to be looking at this and saying, here's how we adopt for us. It's going to be different across, every business and every industry. What's unique about Nashville specifically, I think, is our universities that are here and how they're placing people and research, into every industry that's within. It's just so integrated here is what I'm getting at. I think you know that very well because you guys do a lot of work with universities. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. And I'll talk regionally first, we have a great relationship with Vanderbilt, of course. Vanderbilt was one of our early partners that we established to help vet some of my early work in the innovative kind of space. It was medical in nature. And I'd produced a novel calculation of stress. I am not an expert in physiobiological response to environments. They have really talented folks on their medical side that help me vet some math. And we use that as the basis for, okay, well, now that you guys have seen the tech, do you want to test it with us? Well, yeah, this sounds really cool. And so we initially formed a strategic partnership with Vanderbilt to really explore, how does this weird new space that we're starting to conquer, how do we use tech, again, to keep the design processes human and better understand how people interpret things that we can influence? We use that as a basis for that engagement, and they're doing really brilliant things around that work. So yeah, we formed a strategic partnership with them. We partner with folks locally like Belmont for education for our senior level professionals internal to Gresham Smith. Expanding out from just those two, we have a formal strategic partnership that we developed with Carnegie Mellon. And I've helped to use that relationship to have a hackathon locally where we pulled in student teams. We tried to tackle the biggest threat right now is data centers and energy delivery, and how do we do that responsibly as professionals? How can we influence portions of those design projects to be less of a burden on local communities? How do we recycle water? Those types of approaches to be more thoughtful about really impactful, massive facilities that by and large communities don't want. We can influence. We can start to challenge how we even approach the entire design process to things like that. So Carnegie Mellon is world renowned for their modeling. They have a fantastic sustainability and resiliency center, which we also invest heavily in sustainability and resiliency as a firm. So there's natural marriages between folks like that are already doing really great work that want to even do better. And we have relationships with folks like SCAD for high architecture. I'm on their mentoring program and have helped to encourage them and influence their injection of AI types of tools in meaningful ways that doesn't supplant and replace their younger architects' ability to create and design really cool things. So yeah, we've done very targeted strategic partnerships with academic partners, but it's, again, selfishly, I want to establish a pipeline of talent that believes in the same types of things that we believe as a firm. I want to expose them to what I believe is the best culture of an architecture and engineering firm, as mentioned by our CEO. I believe that, and I want to showcase that. And then, you get to share information about how people are shaping up to use the next tools, or how we can drive change in the design environment by engaging with bright-eyed college students that are thinking big.
That's part of why I think Nashville is so ripe for innovation. We have so many universities within such a small radius, and that leads to such great big ideas.
It's funny you bring this up, because next week we kick off our big intern event where we have all of our interns in Nashville, and we kind of line all this out. But broadly, we're a large employer in Nashville. We love that we are surrounded by these talent generators in our local universities, but we have to use that to the advantage of the community that we ultimately serve. So yeah, we have to be really meaningful, really embedded with the curriculum, with how the people are wrapping value systems around the curriculum and what they're choosing to do with it as professionals. It's a sweet spot as far as I'm concerned. Nashville's got a lot of really positive things going for it. And we're, of course, happy to be here as our base of operations, headquartered in Nashville.
What about Nashville's community and collaborative spirit really speaks to you individually?
I would say, so I originally lived in Nashville in the early 2000s, and I moved away with Gresham Smith, and now have had the opportunity to come back. And I missed just how approachable, how friendly, and how much people care about the community in Nashville. It's been really, really, personally, I draw a lot of inspiration just from meeting folks like you. And we met a handful of folks this morning in prep for this podcast. They're all really kind people. That means a ton to me, because I I love my job. I want to make the best decisions, and knowing that we have folks like you and we have people like other Nashvillians that really care about this place and preserving what's unique about, what we have. It's a fun place to be. So yeah, I draw a lot of personal inspiration and love just being back in Nashville for that reason.
Sticking on to kind of the human experience and the personal level, what about AI has affected you in that way?
So much like probably you did, you go all in initially when a new tool is launched. And we were very early adopters as a heads up. So we knew it was coming. We were prepped when things like ChatGPT launched. And I probably used it way more than I should have, but I realized that was to my own personal detriment too. If you start to offload critical thinking skills to a tool, you're no longer performing critical thinking skills yourself. And so I have to be very intentional, and I choose to engage with things like LLMs in very targeted ways. So let's say you ask me a bunch of questions that you want me to respond to for an article. I will write those, and I will put them in my own authentic language.
Thank you.
Of course. No M dashes, no it's not just this, it's something else. But that's I need to go through that because I want to be able to convey an authentic message to you and to whoever and chooses to ingest it via your publication. But I will use LLMs to say, hey, where are my points weak? What holes exist in this logic? Not change this language, but it's great at that. It's like, hey, there's research around this topic that you've just responded to that says this is very important. And I will go and use that as a jumping off point to research that, form a well-rounded out opinion of it, and modify my own personal language accordingly. But that's great. As a research tool, it's incredible. You just have to be very targeted. And another thing that I will do is I've put personal guidelines. You can put personal settings in our internal, we call it GIA, Genuine Ingenuity Assistant, that says, don't generate language for me. I have to start with something. And so you can kind of limit yourself through some of those guardrails, and I've absolutely got those on.
We could have a whole other podcast about the guardrails.
It's only 30 minutes.
I know. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I appreciate you, Nicolle, and I appreciate Nashville Post for taking an interest in what we're doing at Gresham Smith. I truly love what we're building, and I feel really, really good about the future of design as a result of what we've got going on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Nashville Post Podcast. Be sure to follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. And please help spread the word by sharing, rating, and reviewing the show. The Innovations and Ideas digital series is brought to you by the Nashville Post with support from Cumberland Pharmaceuticals. For more content like this, go to nashvillepost.com and follow us on LinkedIn or wherever you get your news. This episode was produced in partnership with Relationary Marketing and the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. Produced and engineered by Buckner, Chuck Bryant, AJ Meyers, Kammer and Amira McCall.